Louisiana, David Vitter. Senator, who do you think is going to make the first move here?
Well, good to be with you, Melissa. The president has to lead. It's always been up to presidential leadership on this issue. He has to lead. I think the solution, the compromise, is pretty obvious. It's a tax increase, but embedded in tax reform, with rates not going up, but actually going down, and spending and entitlement reform.
Okay,
that's the
let's take
obvious compromise and the obvious package. The question is President Obama going to lead on that?
Why? Why does he have to go first? I mean, couldn't you show him up and jump out there with a good proposal out of the gate?
Anybody could do that. It's simply not going to have the credibility, garner the attention without the president leading. That's number one. Number two, the reason he has to go first is he's really pulled back in all previous negotiations, like when it fell apart about a year ago. So Republicans need to be convinced that he's game for this and he's open to this obvious compromise. Republicans have made that step before. The Republicans on the so-called super committee basically proposed a version of this before.
But don't you just look like obstructionists? I mean, it seems like, just from a negotiating standpoint, if you hop out there first and say, we have come to the table with a solution, no matter what, the other side then saying no, they look like they're the problem. So why not go first?
Well, I mean, I think Speaker Boehner basically did that the day after the election. Now, obviously, there wasn't fine detail on it, but he laid out exactly what I'm talking about. He laid out the path forward and asked President Obama to join him on that path. So he outlined exactly that path forward.
So would you agree to raising taxes on people that make over $250,000 a year, or families that make that, or do you think that the number has to be higher?
The devil's in the details. I would certainly prefer the number to be much higher. I would like no tax increase, period. So it goes without saying I'd like the income number to be much higher. Right. I think the key is, though, can't be just a rate increase, which most folks think would be most negative for the economy. It has to be in tax reform without a rate increase. In fact, I'd like all rates to go down. That can be done when you're broadening the base and getting rid of the great majority of credits and deductions and loopholes and special interest provisions.
Okay, so that kind of sounded like a no to my actual question of, would you be willing to raise, marginal rates on people making over $250,000? You'd rather go in
if you're talking about raising marginal rates, that's an absolute no.
Okay.
And I think that would be an absolute no from the Republican House, more importantly.
Yeah. Is it possible, because the thing people say about reforming the tax code is, that's overwhelming. How are we possibly going to do that in time? Is there a practical way to do that before we go barreling over this cliff?
That's not going to be done in all of the details necessary by December 31st. However, what could be done is an outline of this grand bargain with deadlines into the new year, continue the present rates, have mandates from the relevant committees, House and Senate, to report tax and entitlement reform bills following this outline by a date certain.
So is this another one of those things where we sort of lay out something that's cobbled together but don't make the hard decisions? I mean, would that be, some people say that, Washington's going to kick the can down the road. I hate that phrase, but it just sort of fits. Would what you're talking about be that?
If you're asking is something in precise detail, both on the tax side and the spending side, going to be perfected and passed by December 31st, I don't think there's any chance of that as a practical matter. So if you're asking that, yes, I think the can will be kicked down the road, but it's a little different if you have a fairly clear outline of where you're going with deadlines for the committees to report those bills.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Melissa, very much.
I hope we get to a solution here. Thank you.